Howdy peeps. Well, some of you might be pleased to know I'm not following through with the part 4, 5, 6 and all of that. Instead I wanted to talk about my reactions and the whys and the wherefores. The most part of that I hadn't seen the video, so I was doing it all live, as it were, raw as they call it. So no scripts, no knowing what was going to be said next. And then after doing several hours throughout the night, I did about four videos, all of which are about half-hour long. And obviously I've deleted them, so I'm not happy. Funny that. What a thing that might be, hey? And then I thought, you know what, I'm gonna sit back and review as to why this mindset, why am I taking this approach to it? Well, there's a lot of different reasons. Now I try and look at things as objectively as I can. Unfortunately, being human, sometimes that does make it somewhat difficult. Now, further into that video, I mean, for starters, there's the usual sort of stonewalling and gaslighting treatment that we see from a lot of women nowadays anyway, especially if they're pushing a narrative. Now, by stonewalling, I mean they will bring up a topic and then close it down immediately, so you're not allowed to talk about it. You're not allowed to bring that up on the basis of, in this instance, feelings. You know, respecting the feelings of the family. Don't bring up the Sarah Everard case. Again, I haven't done any further research on it, and the thing is there's so much that goes on nowadays that we don't know about until years later, you know. And again, not justifying the actions of what happened there, not in the slightest. I'm saying that were there, you know, crucial mitigating circumstances that led to that moment, you know, that. And especially given the sort of, even the profile of that one, the guy was a cop. He was quite high up in the police, if I recall correctly. And that also comes with its own set of problems. But, yeah. Either way, you weren't allowed to talk about it, even if you did have any evidence that might have put a bit of light on the subject as to why such a horrific act might have occurred. But you're not allowed to talk about it, get shut down, move on to the next. So, okay then, let's do that. Because you're not allowed to talk about it because she doesn't want you to. And with that, it then goes on to say, you know, to, in my opinion at least, gaslight the masses by saying, oh yeah, we're not saying that it's not all men. And then saying that, oh yeah, you know, before you guys, in this instance, she's referring to the men that would come back with backlash and say that, oh well, women this and women that, as she put it, and then generalise with that tarring brush, right? Gaslight much? And then goes on to tar us with the fucking same brush that she told us not to tar anyone else with, but rules for thee but not for me. I get you. Right, okay then. You see why that doesn't work all of a sudden. You know, for a movement that is so supposedly about equality, that is the last thing that you are portraying, especially in that video. Especially in that video. So let's look at the sort of basics. And I'm going to go into some of the stuff that she said in her video. So, in order to make someone else feel safe, I just want to point out, it's no one's job, duty, obligation or any of that to make sure someone else is feeling okay in any given situation. You're just not responsible for them. You don't know what's going on in their head at that moment. You don't know the situation that they were in prior to getting to where they were at. If you were walking along the same bit of road that you are then expected to cross the road, because If you're not willing to cross the road, then obviously you're one of these bad men that she's referring to that do horrible things to women. Yeah, another form of gaslighting. Wonderful. You go, girl. No, really, just go. Just go away. Stay away from men. People like you throw innocent men in prison for no fucking reason based on your feelings. Here we go, I'm getting irate again. But to not even see that as an infringement on human rights, to not even consider it to be that, is just wow. And again, we're expected to know what women are feeling. You don't know what anyone is feeling at any given moment in time. You know, you could be a guy that goes down to the pub, you go there every night, and you might recognise the same sort of crowd. And one day you go to the bar, you order a drink, and for some unknown reason to you, the guy standing next to you who has just ordered a drink might decide to give you a fucking left hook. And you have no explanation as to why that happened. Now you could argue all sorts of things. Well, maybe you spilt his drink, maybe this, maybe that. But you're not allowed to talk about that. The fact is that he gave you a fucking left hook and knocked you on the floor, right? I'm just giving an example. Right? You can't know how other people are feeling. And then there's the other flip side to all of this. And in another video that I've done recently, which is also half an hour long, and I've just deleted because it's just like, what's the point? It's like a lot of women seem to have problems these days with regulating their emotions and their feelings, and a lot of them are I would argue a lot of them are gone undiagnosed, as that one goes, but 15% of women, I think it is, maybe a bit more now in the UK, especially since the last couple of years, they've been diagnosed with all sorts, whether it's depression. A lot of people cover their actual bad traits with depression when it's not depression at all. That's just what they say to make you feel sorry for them. But anyway, moving on. So later in the video, she then goes on to, and I'm trying to view this from a different couple of perspectives. Maybe it was done in innocence. At the same time, I'm thinking, well, you know, if you want to captivate an audience, if you want to get them to relate to you so that they will agree with what you're saying. Now, in this, I have to stop there. For starters, she's obviously a female content creator, and I would say quite attractive, to be fair, right? I'd say she's quite attractive. So instantly she's going to get the following of a lot of guys. Whether they are good or bad remains to be seen, who will have an interest in seeing her content. They will also perhaps want to try and put themselves out there, you know, notice me senpai and all of that, right? For those of you that are aware of that, you know, notice me, look at me, I'm agreeing with you, you're the best, oh, I love you, I love your hair, and all of that. Because they have their own personal vested interest as to why they would agree with something like that in the first place, without really taking into consideration what that means for them. You know, you're having your rights taken away, and these guys are hoping to maybe get a shot at having a date with her or something like that. Who knows, right? But she's got that advantage to begin with. And that's just looking at it from a male perspective. Speaking more about that perspective, a lot of guys these days, it seems, are quite socially awkward, don't quite know how to interact with women. They haven't got a great deal of game going on in terms of knowing how to approach women, talk to women, or be around women. Now, what she is saying is that you should flat out not go near them, because you don't know how they're feeling at the time. And, you know, and look, I will agree with one thing that she said, and that is like, well, it's probably not a good idea to approach a woman that's on her own at night, even if you do have the best intentions in the world. Because for starters, you don't know how crazy that woman is, and you don't know if you're going to get a false allegation thrown your way, You don't know that. It's just as risky for the women as it is for the men, but there's different levels. There's different levels of that. Then later in the video, so talking about this social awkwardness, later in the video she's like, oh yeah, I have she says that she had her own social issues, she misunderstands things, doesn't quite get things sometimes, which a lot of guys have that as well. A lot of guys, especially when it comes to talking to women, they don't know how to perceive what is being portrayed in front of them, because they don't know how to interact with women, or what the body language signs might mean. But in her doing that, she's also further captivating an audience, because there's two ways that can work. One, guys are going to feel sorry for her and at the same time relate, because they are in a similar sort of boat. And then you're relying on the legitimacy of what she is saying as to whether she actually has these things, or whether she is saying it to draw in the audience. Because in the same breath, she then says at the end of the sentence, oh, I've got all these social issues, I misunderstand things, and I'm not quite sure, but even I know not to approach a woman like when she's on her own at night. The truth of that one is, a woman is more likely to approach another woman that is on their own late at night, in my opinion, than most guys. And again, it's a 50-50, and she does have a point with her video with saying this as well. It is a 50-50 as to, if a guy was to do it, as to whether the intentions are good or bad. And when you're on the receiving end of not knowing whether something is good or bad, it does put you in a vulnerable position. So I'm not trying to discredit what she's saying by her saying that. I am kind of agreeing. But in most cases, it is of my opinion that guys would be more interested in making sure that she's actually okay, and that she isn't in any form of danger. That is part of the sort of basic human male function, protector to provider. Whilst at the same time, the other two sort of traits that we have is hunter-gatherer. Now, the way you could look at that if you wanted to put a man down is like, hunter, okay, so you're a predator then. It's, well, yeah, you kind of have to be if you want to feed the family, right? If you're in the most basic of settings, you're in a cabin out in the woods and you haven't got any shops nearby, and you do rely on hunting and fishing in order to get food, then yeah, you do kind of have to be that, air quotes, predator, right? As opposed to any other kind of predator that it gets referred to these days, things taken out of context. And how they love doing that. But anywho. And then later on in the video, and this was the sort of real kicker for me, is when she infantilizes her audience. She treats them like children, and starts going on to say about this story about some bears in some woods, and some bears are okay and some bears are bad, and some bears will straight out kill you, and all of this. And I've got to say, I lost my shit at that point. I'm like, wow, you're treating your audience like that? And you're getting away with it on the basis that you're female and you know it. And you fucking know it. And so that it was at that point where I thought, you know what, I can't carry on doing these videos, because I can't argue with stupid. You don't argue with an idiot, because in the end they drag you down to the level and then they beat you with experience, right? That's what it comes down to. Now, sure, it's a bit dismissive of me to say, oh well, she's just an idiot. No, I don't actually think she is an idiot. I actually think she's quite cunning. Quite sinister, in fact. Wanting to control the other half of the population, using fear tactics and shame and infringing on human rights. I mean, could you imagine the backlash if someone was to say in that scenario, well, I feel intimidated by people of colour, so if you could please keep 3 steps back from me, or cross the road, or take a different route home. Could you imagine the damn backlash from saying that? But because this is a generalising, sweeping, broad brush, she gets to get away with it. She just gets to fucking shit on all men and get away with it, you know. Maybe she's not actually intentionally doing that, but at this point, you know, when you know as much about psychology as some of us do, and how people can go from being that passive aggressive attitude, you know, from being, oh, but I'm just a sincere woman, and you know, and they've already fucking gaslit and stonewalled you in the beginning of the video and shut down any possible point that you might want to bring that is actually relevant. And they shut all that down, and then they still play the victim, and then they double down, and then they infantilise their audience with a story of like, well, you have to get from this point to that point, and the only way you can get through it is by going through these woods where there's all these bears, and some of them might do bad things and some of them might not, and it's dark, so you can't tell the difference. So I have been listening, did listen to the story. I just thought it was making fun of your audience like that is ridiculous. But then maybe that is the mentality of your audience at the same time. Maybe they are on that same level. Maybe they need their emotions checked. But realistically, the sort of long, tall and short of all of that is, it's no one's job to know how someone else is feeling, a stranger is feeling. You ain't gonna know, you ain't never gonna know. You know, you can only be empathetic with someone, generally speaking, that you actually know. Or maybe you've been in the exact same situation as another person. Maybe then you will understand empathy a bit better. Otherwise, all you can do is be sympathetic to the cause, which is different to empathy, but I'm going off on a different tangent. But then, you know, it's just that thing. To me, it seemed pointless carrying on with this video, because you're not allowed to argue, you're not allowed to fight back, you're not allowed to defend yourself, and you have to do as they say. That is literal oppression. That is literally how oppression works, right? And to me, it was just a whole bag of what the fuck. And this is from someone that, you know, like, I see the reality. You know, I've said it time and time again. You know, if a woman has a problem, she can go to a bunch of strange guys, generally speaking, depending on the area, the circumstances, and she'll have a group of white knights ready to stand by her side and look after her. And they'll probably be quite happy to beat the crap out of an innocent man, just to make themselves look better in front of her. Yeah, that is the truth of the society that we live in. That is close to the truth. But then there's all sorts of issues with what she expects from men and how she treats that scenario. So if you're not willing to cross the road, keep 3 feet back, or 3 steps back, as she said, or take a different route home, which might potentially get you killed, but I'm sure she won't mind that happening either. Just saying. Now, let's take that walking 3 steps behind a woman thing. A woman that you don't know how they're feeling, you don't know anything about them. Generally, I tend to assume that they're neurotic wrecks, because sometimes they are, and it does seem to be more of a thing these days. But if you're walking 3 steps behind a woman, is that not more intimidating? And more importantly, you know, as a hunter-gatherer, I would need to see where things are in order to do something, right? So if there's someone walking behind you, you can't see what they're doing or what they're about to do. So that in itself causes a problem. You don't want them walking behind you. If anything, you want them to overtake you and carry on running. You want them to do that. But it's like you if you have got these issues, and whereas these anxiety issues, which is what I think they are, it's what I think it boils down to. And again, not to say that there aren't bad people out there. There are. We've always said that there are bad people out there, and giving women their independence means that you will also fall prey to these bad people the same as a lot of good men do. I need to shut this one up. You know, the same in the same way that a lot of good men end up being killed on the streets of London. Check them statistics out, and then compare them to that versus harassment. Now again, what is even, I mean, even the definition over here, because this is relevant to the video, even the definition over here of what is a sexual assault, again, she gets to say all these things on her channel, and I'm sure it doesn't have a great deal of consequence, whereas a male content creator, I wonder if the same rules apply. Probably not. It would be somewhat biased, and it would also kind of make sense, seeing as the CEO of YouTube is in fact female, who might potentially have a distaste for men that bring up valid points or arguments. You know, the best way to shut them down is to silence them. You know, yeah. And I've just lost where I'm going, where I was going with that one. But yeah, the comparison of that kind of assault, in whereas it doesn't even have to be a physical thing, it can be based on how the person felt at the time, and doesn't require any evidence. And you don't see that as being a slight problem. Or what if the other person on the receiving end, or supposedly on the receiving end of being looked at, you know, how can you justify that? What if they're an emotional wreck? What if they're paranoid? Because these are all things. These are things within our society. This is why the DSM-5 actually exists. Because lo and behold, everything that is listed in that manual is a part of the human condition. All of it. And there's still a lot more that needs to be investigated and trying to find solutions around. But I think a lot of the time you're not going to find solutions around. It's because it becomes, you know, tailored to the individual. As the saying goes, not every woman is the same, and not every man is the same. They may have similar kind of traits in how they behave and this kind of a thing. And the more I look at society now, and the reason my channel took the turn that it did, or why it even became a thing, is because in my observations, I've noticed that there are far more women that are showing these narcissistic traits out there, and they're out destroying men's lives. And in this case, they're now trying to push the narrative a bit further in trying to have men's rights taken away even further. You know, it is a privilege if you can have someone cross the road on the basis of your gender and they don't know how you're feeling. That is a literal privilege. A privilege which you should not, absolutely should not be entitled to. And to put it as a request with the double-edged dagger, not even a sword, this is a dagger at this point, double-edged dagger. And whereas if you don't fall in line with what they want, then you're one of these bad men that do bad things to people with absolutely zero evidence that that man has ever set a foot wrong in his life. And this is why I get so irate about videos like that. It's just like, wow, you have got a nerve. You have got some nerve. And as the saying goes, and this is going to make me sound somewhat, I dare say, narcissistic even, probably. But this isn't, this is a you problem, not a men problem. The problem isn't all men in this instance. The problem is you and your anxieties. And if you think that some of these guys, and there's this one touched the nerve with me, but if you think that some of these guys out there have an opinion, or that goes off the narrative, oh well, then you should be like locked up and not allowed out alone ever, and all of this. It's just like, and you don't see a problem with that. How about we lock you up in a room and you don't go out ever unless you're supervised? You know, I'm sure they'd have something to say about that. Anyway, look, I'll wrap this one up. This one's 25 minutes long. You know what, I think I don't know what direction to take the channel at the moment. There's a couple of sort of things. I think I am going to keep it on mental health and mental health awareness. I think that's what I want to do at the moment. And you need to be aware of chicks like that and their mental health, because they can throw an innocent man in prison for no reason other than their feelings at the time, which could well be unregulated. Their feelings might even require some form of regulation via means of medication. But here we are. Anyway, I'll wrap this one up. Thank you all for listening. It's much appreciated. Thank you for subscribing and everything else. It is much, I do appreciate that. Thank you for listening. If you have any thoughts, comments or opinions, feel free to jot them down as always. And until the next one, stay cool, stay free and peace out.